coming, the sun's zooming in, meltdown expected, the wheat is good there, engines stop running, but I have no fear, 'cause London is drowning. I live by the river.
Hello everybody and welcome to the By the Minute Arsenal podcast, our second of 2018, and things haven't really improved. I'm not talking about the podcast, hopefully, I'm talking about the content that's supplied by Arsenal. We haven't had a great week, but never mind, we are here and we will try and cheer people up and give people things to talk about. We'll see how it goes. Right, I am Matt H. I am delighted to be joined as ever with Pete. Hello, Pete.
Evening, Matt. I'm still waiting for news that Notts Forest fielded an illegible player.
It's an excellent idea. Let's keep fingers crossed for that. If it comes through in the next half hour, that would be fantastic. Actually, we're recording this on Monday evening. I fear that won't be the case, but it's a nice idea. And we also have Matt. Hello, Matt.
Evening, Matt. Evening, everyone. Wow, this is going to be an absolute blast, isn't it, this week?
We've had a few pods like this. We've been doing this for a year and a half now, and with us not being responsible for this, we hasten to add, we've had a few pods like this. But there are perhaps, trying to look on the bright side of things, which I think we do try and do generally, there's perhaps some bright spots we can drag out from certainly the first of the two games we'll be discussing, which was the game against Chelsea. Let's get straight to that then. So last Wednesday, wasn't it? We're at home to Chelsea. 2-2 was the final score. That doesn't really tell the story. Where to start with this? Well, I was the only one of the three of us who was not there. Matt, you, as you mentioned before we started recording, you improved your overall record of home supportership this season. This seemed like too big of a game to just start with the sort of team news and move through. So I'm not really sure what to do with it. I mean, it was the thing that came up, the first thing that struck me when I was thinking about the game afterwards was how similar it was in a way to the games against United and Liverpool, where actually there was a lot to like about what Arsenal did, but they couldn't really convert it into a win, which that tells a tale in itself, I think. Matt, what did you think as you were there for the first time in perhaps a while?
Yeah, it's almost as though that's our best case scenario. We expect us to defend pretty badly, but going forward we were impressive in parts. It was action packed for sure. I feel like the defence, we're missing Koscielny, obviously. Chambers, Holding, Mustafi probably haven't played together as a three very often, and that showed. But I was impressed by Maitland-Niles again. I think he's looking really composed, even in his unnatural position. But yeah, I mean, our best defender was probably Morata. He missed three of the clearest one-on-ones you could wish to see, and but for that, we probably would have been comfortably beaten.
I was going to take credit for Morata actually, because I believe he's in my fantasy team.
Oh, there we go.
So naturally, I do this thing. People say, "Oh, join the fantasy competition." So I do one at the start of the year, and then promptly forget about it. And I'm fairly sure he's in there in my team. And he was woeful in terms of the chances he had that, as you say, he didn't take. Pete, we'll get into bits and pieces later on perhaps, but is there any sort of general points you'd like to make about the game before we do that?
No, I quite enjoyed all the Morata misses. They were rather fine. Although it's always you don't know whether to laugh or cry, really, do you, when we're letting things go as easily as that. But I found them all very amusing.
Good. Well, let's start there and then move on. The team news was mentioned there by Matt. It wasn't the defence we might have quite liked to see with Koscielny not being there, and Holding in. We won't talk about Holding now necessarily, but I think we may come back to him in the cup game, which we'll come to later on. But I suppose the main thing was that Arsenal looked pretty good, particularly in the first half. I mean, it was a good game, I think. I mean, certainly that's how it looked on TV. You two can tell me if that was any different. As we've mentioned, Morata being cleaned through, there was a vague shout for a penalty for a foul on Maitland-Niles, which I don't think there was really very much there. But then Sanchez did manage to get a shot that came off both posts and out, which was disappointing, obviously. And then Fabregas had a chance just before half-time, which he perhaps should have done better with. We'll go back to the people who were there. Matt, did you have any good or bad feelings at half-time about the way this might go?
No, I think it was pretty even. As nil-nils goes, it was an entertaining first half. Courtois' save from Sanchez that hit both posts was really good. Looked like that was definitely going in. We got to the byline, especially on our left-hand side with Maitland-Niles quite a few times, but our final ball wasn't quite there. And then, yeah, you just felt that defensively we were always capable of a horrendous mistake. But it was a pretty even first half. And I think that's as good as we could have expected in these big games. Sometimes we've thrown them away early on. So, for the first 45 minutes, I was pretty satisfied with.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the first 10 minutes of particularly these big games, although to be honest, it happens in any Arsenal game these days. The first 10-15 minutes, I tend to be on tenterhooks completely, waiting for an error somewhere and for a goal to be conceded. Didn't happen on last Wednesday, and so we looked pretty good. And then, let's move into the second half. Took the lead after a period of what I can only describe as dominance. We were completely in charge of the first 15 minutes of the second half. It was wonderful to watch. And then you hoped something was going to capitalise, something was actually going to happen from all this possession, and lo and behold, up pops Jack Wilshere with a cracking finish. Pete, that was an enjoyable sort of 15-20 minutes in that second half.
It certainly was, and it was a great atmosphere as well at the ground. Don't know if we should mention that, but it was another a big game that everyone was really up for, and certainly that period, as you say, was really impressive, and everyone was behind the team, and it was the culmination. It was Wilshere's. Well, it was a brilliant finish, really, wasn't it?
Yes,
beat Courtois at the near post at that speed was amazing.
It's fantastic, and it's great to see him scoring. I think because the way he's come into the team, he's slotted straight back in as if he's never been away almost. It just to me seems to look very comfortable and very relaxed in back in the team, and it does seem to make a difference. It does seem to give a little bit of a drive from midfield. So let's hope, touch wood, he can stay injury free and get his contract sorted out and be a strong member, reliable member of the team, certainly for the next, well, hopefully for quite a long time, but certainly for the next few months in terms of this season. The joy was not unconfined, or it was, but only for 4 minutes until Arsenal managed to give away a penalty. Matt, bit soft, but I think it probably was a penalty in with benefit of hindsight.
Yeah, it was a bit soft. Bellerin he kicked his foot, and obviously there's absolutely no reason why he would go to ground normally, but there's contact. You can see why the referee gave it. I definitely don't think it's as bad as some of the other ones we've had recently, but it was so disappointing because we were on top up until that point, and that sort of killed the momentum a bit and got Chelsea back into the game. Cech has spent his entire Arsenal career toppling to his right for penalties. He decided to change his mind this time and topple to his left, and Hazard has gone and put it the other way. I won't give a stat about penalties yet because it's already been proved out of date by the time we come to yesterday's match. But yeah, we're giving them away a bit too regularly, especially when we're incapable of saving them.
Yeah, which, as you say, was been proven repeatedly this week. It's interesting. You said exactly the same thing. You've said the same thing I thought, which was the game really seemed to die quite a bit after that goal went in at 1-1. I think. Oh, well, this is where my memory lets me down. I think there was a relatively short, but still an injury break whilst someone was being treated. I can't remember which side it was. And I think those two things together rather sort of flatten the atmosphere a little bit, or flatten the chances perhaps at each end. Something I wanted to note, because it frustrated me, although there was a little bit of bad luck in terms of the timing. Lacazette coming off with 10 minutes to go, I thought he looked pretty good again. His substitution is only the more frustrating when 4 minutes later Chelsea take the lead through Alonso. Pete, any sense in the stadium that people weren't happy about Lacazette coming off, or are we all just used to it now?
I didn't think so. The people I was with thought it should have happened earlier, to be honest.
Okay.
Thought he looked really knackered, and were disappointed he hadn't come off before 80 minutes or whatever. I mean, it is problematic because when you're replacing him with Welbeck, it's not going to be a good outcome, is it? But I'm quite concerned about Lacazette anyway, and I think the fact how long has it been since he's last scored now? It's a very long time. And, all his efforts were saved fairly easily by Courtois. And I'm beginning to worry about whether he is going to get back to the position he was at the beginning of the season, where he was scoring quite frequently.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't sort of thought like that. I suppose I was frustrated because immediately we took a striker off, so because it was a like-for-like substitution, and you can have a joke about whether it's like-for-like when it's Welbeck coming on or not. But we were immediately then instead of throwing an extra man on, it just seemed to be like a replacement. Yeah, he's been unlucky, hasn't he? I suppose I've been impressed with the way he's looked very busy, and he seems to have fitted in. But you're right. I'll have a look in a minute, see if we can find out when he did last score, because that's an interesting point. That is a concern. Yeah, we'll see if we can look into that in a second. But back to the match, Matt. What were you thinking? And I think I may know the answer to this. What were you thinking when Alonso puts Chelsea 2-1 up with just a few minutes to go?
Oh, I was thinking, here we go again. Another loss for me. It was just so typical. I felt like our bench. I feel like Wenger probably wanted to make subs because we'd lost momentum in the game and we were really going nowhere. But there were no real options. You know, there's not a Giroud to put on. There's not somebody who's going to change the game from that bench. So there was no real point. Alonso scores. We then bring Walcott on a few minutes afterwards for a 2-minute cameo. I'll be honest, I wasn't feeling hopeful, and I'm not sure many people were.
No, I'd given up hope on my sofa at home. To answer the question from Pete, I think if I've found a website, I don't know if it's completely up to date. The last time Lacazette scored was in the game against Man United, actually back on the 2nd of December. Arsenal's only goal in that match. So unless this site isn't quite as good as it could be, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's about 8 games ago. Although he won't have played in all of those, I expect. So yeah, that's a bit of a drought. We can probably start using that word. Well, we stuck at it then, and sorry, go on, Pete.
Say something about the second goal, the second Chelsea goal.
Please do.
Because I felt really sorry for Maitland-Niles because, as Matt said, I thought he was actually very good in this game most of the time, but he did let Zappacosta past him, didn't he, for that second goal?
Yeah, and Zappacosta, he'd come on himself, hadn't he, in the second half, so he may be that little bit fresher. No, that's a very good point. I think
it was just a real shame because he had been so good, and you know he'd looked after what's the Belgian chap's name again?
Hazard, yes,
good one, Hazard. He'd looked after him really well all game, and it was just a real shame. It's been good to see that he hasn't received a lot of criticism for it, but it was to some extent that one moment one moment that led to that second goal.
Conceding a goal against Chelsea, I think, even if you've made a bit of an error, is the kind of thing people will not like, but they'll accept. It's the game. It's when you concede goals in the way we did against Forest, which we'll come to later on. I think is when the knives can really be out. And I think you're right. I think Maitland-Niles, he's just looked very comfortable every game he's played. Of course, there's been the odd error, but he just seems very composed, very very relaxed, very calm on the ball, which is we could do with more of that. So yeah, I think he gets a bit of a pass, doesn't he, to some extent? Although, as you say, if people are really looking at it, then they might sort of not blame him, but see that as being a slight weakness. But he'll work on it. He's got lots and lots of time to do that, hopefully, and he'll learn from that. The other thing I think we can all be quite pleased about with Arsenal was they kept at it. They didn't let that second goal from Chelsea stop them, and it took a while, but eventually, very near the end, our second great finish of the match, as Bellerin, perhaps desperate to score himself after his sort of earlier contributions, as it were, at the wrong end, made it 2-2, and that's how it finished. Matt, that was a cracking finish. That was an enjoyable way to end the evening, at least.
It was a lovely finish. Good for him. He's been under a fair bit of criticism recently, so that was really good. Unfortunately, that wasn't really the last thing I remember from the match, because amidst the celebrations, I glance back at the pitch, and Morata's bearing down on goal.
Yes.
Everyone's still celebrating, so it can't have been more than 20 seconds after kickoff. We managed to save that, and then it's dropped to Zappacosta, and the man behind me has let out one of the loudest screams I've ever heard as Zappacosta has lined his ball up and is arrowing towards the top corner. Luckily, smacks off the bar, but yeah, if we'd have conceded then, I think I probably would have given up because I needed to almost be carried out when that hit the bar.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. I'd forgotten just quite how immediately after that goal it was, but yeah, that was a heart in mouth moment just for me on the sofa. I can imagine it was a lot worse with 60,000 other people going through the same thing around you. Yeah, but we held on with a bit of luck, made it 2-2. I mean, it's a problem in terms of our league position now. We are in 6th place after this. All the Christmas stuff has taken place. We are 5 points off of Liverpool, who are in 4th. We're just a couple behind Spurs, who are in 5th. We've pulled away from Burnley and Leicester, so the top 6 looks fine, but of course that's not really what we're about. Obviously there's a long way to go, 16 league matches, and yeah, it could have been worse. We could have dropped those points against Chelsea. At least we managed to get one back. So there we go.
We almost could have won it at the end as well.
Mm.
After that horrendous Zappacosta moment, we did have a break-up field, didn't we? Which, but for a poor ball from, really can't remember who it was.
Xhaka, I think.
Yeah, Xhaka could have put Walcott in on goal. And
Yep.
would have been an incredible end to that.
It would have been a bit ridiculous, wouldn't it? But well, there we go. Look, we'll take the point. The point in terms of just the game on its own, points shared is probably fine. It puts us in that, a little way behind 4th place, but we do have time. But we're going to need to go on a hell of a run in order to get into the top 4. That is the sort of maximum of our ambitions this season, helped by our performance in the game yesterday. The classic concentrate on the league, or in our case perhaps concentrate on the Europa League would be better, was helped after we lost an FA Cup game, which could almost be a headline in itself given the success we've had. 3 times winners in the last 4 years. We went to Forest yesterday afternoon and lost 4-2, and quite frankly deserved to lose 4-2. There's a lot we can say about this. We should start by noting 2 things about the team, I think. One was there were 9 changes from the previous match against Chelsea, understandably. But the other point I think it's worth noting, there's plenty of experience there. There's Mertesacker, Walcott, Holding, Welbeck, Ospina, and Debussy. These are all people who've played a lot of games. There's a World Cup winner in there somewhere. Excuse me. I don't really know where to start with this. Let's start with the team. Pete, was there any surprises in that team?
Well, I thought the team looked all right, actually. When I saw the team pop up, but I only saw the first 11. And it took me quite a while to find out who was on the subs bench. And at that point, my head dropped. And I thought, oh, God. We obviously had no plan for any backup, and I think that was the mistake. Really, it was the team itself, although a gamble. It should have been able to go and put in a better performance than that anyway against Nottingham Forest. But I wasn't too disappointed with the first 11. I was disappointed with the subs bench and the fact that we didn't seem to be able to didn't seem to have anything on there that could change the game if we got ourselves into trouble, which we then duly went and did.
Wow.
I thought that was very disappointing. But what I think it plainly does show is presumably we are going to take it very seriously against Chelsea on Wednesday.
Well, that's an interesting thought. We'll come to that. I mean, it's an interesting thought to see if that would have changed. Of course, we'll never know that, but if it's changed given the result from yesterday. Matt, any thoughts about the team before we zip through the first and second halves? Because I think this game, it's not necessarily about the individual goals and what have you. It's the overall, if you like, feeling of what an appalling performance, I think, generally speaking, it was. But was there anything about the team you spotted?
No, I mean, Holding and Mertesacker at back 2 seems risky at the best of times. Mertesacker needs a fair bit of protection with his lack of pace, and Holding isn't the quickest, and playing him in a 2 is risky. But to be honest, I think he's got to the stage where we've tried every combination in defence. It makes no difference. We look just as hopeless with anyone. So I think the problems are a bit deeper than just whoever the personnel in defence. But I agree with Pete. I think the main problem was the bench. And I don't think there's any reason why Sanchez and Lacazette couldn't have been on the bench. They've played, one competition this year. Lacazette most weeks has played, 70 minutes a week before he's been subbed off. So it's not as though they've been overexerted this season at all. And it just gave us nowhere to go, I guess, if it did go badly. which it obviously did.
Yeah, it should be mentioned, of course, this was also Arsene Wenger had taken a 3-match ban and a 40 grand fine, I think it was, for comments made after the West Brom game. So this was his first game not on the bench. I don't think that makes the slightest bit of difference, but we should just mention it just in terms of the reporting of what happened. We'll go through this. Go on, Pete.
Just one thing about the defence, because again, from the lineup, you couldn't tell whether we were going to play a back three or a back four, and to be honest, I was waiting to find out. I mean, there were different arrangements on different sources. One with Debussy as a central defender and things like that, and you really couldn't tell just from the names what formation we were going to play at the back. And it took me quite a while watching it to actually try and figure out what we were playing. I don't know about you, but it looked to me almost like we were playing a back three because the full backs were so high up the pitch, and as far as we ended up playing a back two, didn't we?
Well, it was almost at times like we weren't playing anyone there, given the problems with Mertesacker and Holding, but we'll come to that. But yeah, I suppose the problem you have here, isn't it, is you've got, when you mix and match these, if you like, second 11s, you're going to have people who are not used to playing with each other in the same way. Now, that's no excuse. They're all professionals. They should all be able to gel in to some degree. But yeah, when it's not clear to the players or the fans or the people who are the people in charge exactly what the formation is, then you've got problems. And I mean, let's be fair. The first thing we should mention, of course, the next thing we should mention, at least it's not the first thing, is how good Forest were. They were very lively, very good team. They took their chances. No one seems to be in any doubt they deserved the win. How they got there might have seemed a bit odd with 2 penalties and all the rest of it. But we'll get through the first half then. A goal apiece pretty quickly. Not sure what was going on with that first goal. The defensive setup for Arsenal was pretty appalling. We managed to strike back very quickly with a header with Holding and Mertesacker involved. Ironic given their deficiencies, shall we say, at the other end. And then just before half time, Forest took the lead again with fantastic control and volley. So we go in at half time 2-1 down, but obviously still in it. But perhaps slightly lucky to still be in it. Matt, any thoughts about any of those goals or anything else in the first half?
The first one must be some of the most stupid defending I've ever seen. Mertesacker holding that sort of keeping everyone in a line on the 6-yard box is fine, but it's not fine if the wall is 3 yards further back than everyone else. The Forest player could see that, so he just stood in the open space. Why no Arsenal player was able to work that out, I have no idea. It's just unbelievably bad, really. We got our goal back. And then the second goal, it's not great defending again. Maitland-Niles got done on the outside. 2 pretty terrible headed clearance, first by Walcott and then by Holding. But yeah, there's not much you can do about the finish. We go in 2-1, and I wasn't feeling confident at all because I don't know who their striker was, but he was causing us all sorts of problems in behind. And Walcott, Welbeck, Iwobi, they're not the kind of players you can just give the ball to and hope they produce something. So I think we were in big trouble from that moment onwards.
Yeah, if it's Brereton you're thinking of, the striker, he was, I believe, only 18 as well, and just looked very good against a defence that should be not allowing him to look that good. However keen and talented he might be, he's up against international quality players in theory, and it's just very disappointing how much he was allowed to sort of to boss things. Pete, anything to say about the first half for any of those goals? I think the defending, as Matt's noted on that first goal, was particularly the average, should we say?
On the first goal, it was appalling, wasn't it? On the second, though, I think we do have to say that was a rather classy finish. I mean, the guy might not really have actually known what the heck he was doing, but it was a classy finish. And I wasn't, maybe Holding's header out was not as great as it could be, but it wasn't bad. And somebody could have maybe been closing him down a bit better than they were.
It was a great finish, wasn't it? You take your hat off to that kind of thing. Well, let's move into the second half then, and 2 more goals for Forest, 2 penalties. We managed to get a very odd one back from Welbeck, who just managed to jump on to a bit of a defensive mistake and roll it home, but that was between the 2 penalties, so our chances of getting it back, at least to a draw, did not last very long. I don't think there's any complaints about the awarding of the penalties. I'm not even sure it's worth going on about the double touch that was supposed to have happened for the second penalty. Forest deserved to win. 4-2 seemed like an almost a fair result. Pete, anything you want to say about any of the second half action before we get into more sort of general conversation about the performance?
No, I don't think the first pen I don't think was, but you can see why it was given. You know, I think it probably if it had been against us, I would have wanted it. So I won't moan too much about it.
Yeah, I think that was my gist. Yeah, it's one of those. There wasn't quite the wasn't the controversy around it that we might have had with other penalties recently or given against us.
The double touch probably is a double touch, but there's nothing conclusive about it. And you know, what can you do? The referee, unless they can be sure there's been a double touch or the lino. And I thought it was quite reasonable for him to check with the lino first. If neither of them could be sure there was a double touch, then they're going to give it, aren't they? And it probably was a double touch, but whatever.
I found it. I think you're right. I did find it mildly embarrassing that our players were going on and on about it in a rather desperate sense, like they somehow knew that it was. And I know that's what footballers do, but even after the decision had been made, a number of them got booked, didn't they? Because arguing about it, like, God, just leave it. It's not what you're going to lose. Accept it. Don't try, holding on to this tiny straw, as it were, to say, oh, he's got a, that shouldn't count because of the double touch. That wasn't the issue here. The issue was much bigger than that, and let's face it, it wouldn't have made a difference anyway. Matt, anything about any of the second half action?
I feel like we can accept many things watching. What we can't accept is Armand Traore marauding through our entire defence. Now, I don't know if my memories of Traore are warped, but I had in my head he was atrocious. And he strolled through our defence, really, tackle after tackle. I've seen some complaints about the second penalty at Debussy got the ball. I mean, he may have done, but he also went through all of Traore. Ospina didn't get close to saving either of them, which I saw yesterday takes us to 28 penalties since we last saved one, back to 2014 and Fabianski.
Wow.
We, maybe stop giving them away is probably more of an issue than saving them, but the referees are certainly not why we lost, and watching Traore stroll through our defence really did top it all off.
Yeah, that's a good point. I had the fear, actually, the moment he picked it up, because he seemed to be he was untouched, and you just thought this could only go one way, and I didn't expect a penalty, but I had my fears when he picked up, and there appeared to be a relatively clear run to goal in front of him, and then like you say, just slaloming through the defence anyway, like that didn't matter. The defence, who by that point had really given up almost. In terms of more, go on, Pete.
Traore. One of the more interesting things that it brought up was I went back to remind myself about Armand, and he was on loan at Juventus for a season.
Was he?
What?
Maybe not as a footballer. Maybe he was there doing something else.
Yeah, we loaned him to Juventus in 2010-2011.
Blimey, that was good. That was clever of us.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. He ended up in Rangers after that.
That's obvious career path from Juventus to QPR. In a more general sense than about the game, I mean, we've touched on the Holding and Mertesacker. I mean, Mertesacker's done very well for the club over the years, but he looked woefully out of his depth yesterday, which is ridiculous. Holding was no use at all, and we have to mention that, I think, given how much we were supportive of him last season and wanted to see more of him, and then it didn't really happen. And maybe yesterday gives us an indication as to why. The thing that was talked about a lot in sort of at the time. The thing that really irritated me was Walcott, mainly because it meant I had to agree with Robbie Savage, which I found a painful experience, because I was there just thinking. There was another occasion where the ball comes down, I think it was the right, and Walcott just tries to cross it. He doesn't look up, he doesn't know who's there or who's not there, and of course it's easily cleared, and I'm thinking, that's ridiculous, you didn't even try and see who was there. And then Robbie Savage actually ended up saying something very similar, so I felt, unclean, as you would. So I thought those three were worth noting. Matt, anyone else you think is due a telling off, or was
No,
it
I
just
mean,
one of those days?
they could all get it. They really could. I'd exclude probably the younger players from that. I thought Maitland Niles, especially in the first half, was as confident as we've seen. I thought Reece Nelson had a couple of good runs. I just feel sorry for the younger players, really, being thrown into that situation. We seem to be destroying Rob Holding bit by bit, as we've done with many centre-backs before. I don't know why this young Greek centre-back signed for us. I don't know why any centre-back with potential would come to us.
Well, I guess they think they've got a good chance of getting a job, as it were, getting a first-team role when they see what's in front of them at times.
2 years and he'll be a wreck. I don't know what he's thinking. I hope we send him on loan for his sake and he go far away. I thought Iwobi was dreadful. Welbeck, I mean, I know he scored another wonder goal, but he just doesn't seem to be able to hit the ball cleanly or where he wants.
I was amazed when that ball rolled sort of neatly into the corner. I have to be honest, I was not expecting that to happen.
The first goal I've seen him score that hasn't ended up on the floor, so that's an improvement. No, we were abysmal all over the pitch, and I do feel sorry for the younger players, especially those who then tossed off the bench to try and salvage the wreckage. Can't be good for anyone. It's just disappointing. FA Cup, we've seen what he can do in the past. You know, it's pretty much kept Wenger's job. Even when our league form's been poor, an FA Cup run has sort of kept the mood up. We've seen how much it can do, and to just toss it away like we did yesterday, it seemed very strange.
Yes.
I don't know what we're prioritising, but even if we won the League Cup, I don't think that's going to compare to an FA Cup run.
No, it's very interesting. You've used some words very similar to what I've written down, which was it's a shame to give our cup up with a whimper, as I've put it, against a managerless mid-table championship team who are not in very good form and only have 10 men by the end of the game. I know that red card was very late and didn't make a difference, but when you look at it like that, it's very poor. I agree with you completely. I don't think that young players are to blame. I hope through the Europa League and the League Cup they get a chance to experience a better sort of team performance now. I think there's much deeper stuff here, which perhaps we're not going to go into now, but I think, to me, this is all coming back again to the manager. This is coming back to a team in his image. It doesn't matter who the players are; they're not performing, and we won't get into this now. We'll perhaps leave it a few weeks and see how things go in January as well. There's a story today about Man City offering a few million quid for Sanchez in January rather than waiting until the end of the season. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, I thought this was just a really, really poor performance. And maybe it's just one of those things. Maybe it's like the Palace game last season or something like that. But I think it's a real shame to be out of the Cup at this early stage, because, as you say, it has been a thing that's kept us going in previous seasons. Now we do have the Europa League this time. And hopefully we'll be in that longer than we would have been in the Champions League in previous seasons, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, very disappointing. The point you make, I think, is a very key one about the young players who've generally done very well when they've come in the other competitions, as we've noted. But it really didn't work yesterday.
Can I just back up those comments?
Absolutely.
And agree that I think that in terms of although we've had a pop at a really badly organised defence that didn't seem to be there at all and got overrun completely by a championship side that without a manager. I think our forward players also have a lot of woes, whelbs, and walks. I mean, you know, come on, this is a championship side with one of the worst defensive records in the championship, and very poor to have scored only 2 goals against them, and just not good enough basically, and it's not the young players' fault that happened.
It's a very good point about there were problems at the back, but obviously there were problems up front. I mean, I alluded to it, my thoughts on Walcott. I believe, I may have misheard this yesterday, but I think they said 7 of the Arsenal starting team were FA Cup winners at one point or another. So you can easily isolate, as it were, who the youngsters are and look at the rest of them and say, well, the rest of you should have been better. The rest of you should have been a magnitude better than you were yesterday. And are they treading water? Are they going through the motions? I say we'll have a deeper look at the team and the club, I think, more specifically, in the future. But we'll leave it for now because we don't want to go on for too long today. But so we're out of the Cup, and that's a shame. But we do still have the League Cup. We have the Europa League to look forward to. So plenty for us to get our teeth into over the next few months on the pod. Speaking of which, let's get to predictions, because we have 2 games coming up before we meet again. One of those is in the League Cup and one is in the league. So before we get to those, though, let's just do an update on the predictions. None of us predicted we'd lose to Forest, so no points there. 2 of you, the 2 people who were going to the game, said there would be a draw against Chelsea. However, Matt said 0-0, Pete said 1-1. Of course, it was actually 2-2. But you do get a point each for that. I get nothing because I thought we'd win, which is obviously the ridiculous suggestion. So there's now only 4 points between top and bottom in our prediction league, but Matt is still at the top. Right. League Cup, Chelsea on, which I forgot which day it is. It's Wednesday, at Stamford Bridge. That's the first leg, obviously, of the semi-final. We are also away to Bournemouth next Sunday at 1:30 in the Premier League. Let's have a word on each and a prediction, please, as brief as you want, because obviously we don't really know what teams we're going to be playing on in terms of the League Cup game, whether we're going to have a strong Arsenal team, a strong Chelsea team, or a weaker one for both. Matt, what are your thoughts on the fare this week?
I feel like there's almost now pressure on him to pick a stronger team than maybe he would have. If we'd have picked a strong team on the weekend and got through in the FA Cup, then I don't think anyone's going to criticise him if we then play a weaker team to Chelsea, and even if we lose. But I don't know if he's prioritising the League Cup, but I think those players have to come back in now. We're going to have to give it a go. I don't know if Chelsea would do the same. I really don't know. Can't say I'm looking forward to Arsenal playing so soon again. I think it's 2 legs, right? This is the first leg.
Yes, that's right.
All right, great. I think we'll lose 3-1 Chelsea.
You think 3-1 to Chelsea? Okay. Give us your Bournemouth thoughts as well, then.
Bournemouth. I don't like us in any away games at the moment, to be honest. But Bournemouth defence looks shaky. I know we had that crazy game there last year. Hopefully we'll be a bit more solid. Through blind hope, I will go for us to win, and I will go 2-1 Arsenal.
2-1. So you've got us losing to Chelsea 3-1 and then beating Bournemouth 2-1. Okay, Pete, what do you think for those 2?
Okay, well, I think we're still on for the Mourinho treble, aren't we?
How are you defining that?
That's the Charity Shield.
Oh, right, I've got you. Sorry, I thought you meant something of beating Mourinho 3 times or something, which I know that's not the case.
No, he claimed it was a treble last season.
Fine. I've always liked him. Always.
He claimed it was a treble. The Charity Shield, the League Cup, and the Europa League.
Right.
It was a treble. So we're still on for it. And the more I look at it, I think Wenger was prioritising this League Cup semi-final. I think he thought, who are we playing? We're playing Notts Forest, followed by Chelsea, followed by Bournemouth. And he's thought to himself, I want my best team out against Chelsea in the League Cup semi-final. It's a semi-final. He's also thinking about the fact that we won the FA Cup last year, beating Man City and Chelsea in the semi-final and final. And he wants it. He's never won it before. Why not? So I think we're going to see pretty much the first team on Wednesday. I don't think we'll see any of the standard League Cup players, other than mainly ones that have pretty much forced themselves into the team, such as Maitland-Niles. So and looking at our record against Chelsea, we're undefeated against them in at least 3 games now.
True.
No, it's 4 games. Sorry, 4 games. We're undefeated. 2 of those we've won, although 1 on penalties. I see no reason to forecast a loss against Chelsea in this game. So I think I'm tempted to. I think 2-1 Arsenal.
2-1. It was all very positive. I thought you were then going to come out and say sort of 0-0 or something, but 2-1 to Arsenal in that first leg match, and then away at Bournemouth.
Well, again, we're away, aren't we? So we'll be rubbish. As long as we're not wearing that blue kit, I think we'll win that 3-1.
Very blimey. So you've got a very healthy week. We'll be delighted if that happens when we come back. Next
why
week.
I say that because I imagine he will seriously go. That he will probably rotate in that game and play some of the younger players, but we shall see.
Well, isn't I was just going to say your prediction is obviously interesting, but actually how you think the team's going to set up for that Chelsea game is particularly interesting to me. I'll be very interested to see who we end up with. Sorry, were you going to say something else?
No, that's it. I'll stick with 3-1 Arsenal against Bournemouth.
Against Bournemouth, okay. So for the Chelsea game, I'll be very quick with this. I have no idea. As I said this last week, I'm giving up, really. I don't seem to have much luck with these prediction things anyway, and it's just getting worse. I've gone for a 2-0 Chelsea win in the first leg, because whilst I see Pete's point, and I put this score in before we started this, so I won't change it now, and Pete's point is very interesting to me, but I'm going to stick with the 2-0 to Chelsea. I think we'll get a mixed team, and I think the moment we have a team that's a bit of a mix, there's that potential of them having not played very much with each other and potential for things to go wrong. So I'm going to go with a defeat there. For the Bournemouth game, I've gone with a 1-0 win only because we're not very good away from home, but Bournemouth aren't very good. Full stop. Their league position suggests that. We have had these mad games with them all. Last season we did. I'm hoping we're not going to be 3-0 down in this one. But Arsenal could be 3-0 up or 3-0 down after 15 minutes. I wouldn't, nothing would surprise me anymore. So that's my thoughts there. So I'm going to go for a narrow victory, as we all have done. Although Pete's gone for that healthy 3-1 against Bournemouth, which is ambitious of him. But there we go. Right, I think we will. We've bit of a bumper version for you there. We'll draw a line under that there. So we will be back next week to discuss those two games and look forward to, I think, we play Palace again after that remarkably quickly, having not played them very long ago. But until then, I will say thank you very much for your time, Pete.
Thank you very much, Matt. It's a pleasure as ever.
Lovely, and same to you, Matt. We'll speak to you next week.
Thank you. I was going to say this week can't be much worse than last week, but that's not true. It can always be worse. So.
We could find ourselves, I suppose, come next Monday when we do this, if we've lost heavily enough to Chelsea, we're in that position where we have to play a second leg, even though we know they're sort of pointless, and that could be the worst feeling of all, particularly when it's Chelsea.
Wonderful.
So there's something to be nice and cheery about for next week, but fingers crossed that won't happen, and fingers crossed we'll do okay. Well, anyway, thank you for everyone for being with me, and thank you for listening, and we'll speak to you again next week. Take care, bye bye.